Alright guys, TouchGrub here back again today. Haven't enjoyed your Monday so far, and today we're going to talk about an absolute bombshell that the CDL dropped just a few hours ago. The next season of competitive play and going forwards in the CDL will be played on personal computers, on PCs, a big change from the console esport that has been Call of Duty for pretty much its entire history since way back at COD 4 Pro Mod, which was played on PCs. Importantly though, it will still be, for the upcoming season at least, played on controller. This of course is a big move. I think the CDL is smart enough not to move this to keyboard and mouse. That would be a big change of course, and would pretty much kill the majority of our pro players who wouldn't be able to compete with some of the guys that could come over from the keyboard and mouse arena. That's maybe a discussion we have in coming days based on the way this is phrased, but there's a number of positives to this. There's also a number of negatives to this as well. I think this is a step in the right direction overall. I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below, but definitely some cons as well as some pros to this one. We're going to do our best to cover those in today's video. Like if you guys enjoy it, subscribe if you are new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. 32,000 subscribers is certainly on the horizon. Before we get into the PC stuff, just to mention a couple of Rostermania things. Crone at CDL Intel said that a couple of days ago, Temp was on stream kind of hinting that he's OpTic Gaming Los Angeles, his fourth slasher, and have definitely done a good job of keeping that under wraps who their fourth is. We talked about the possibility that Gunless maybe sketched on Seattle to go over there, but nothing that I've really heard behind the scenes to corroborate that, so we'll have to see what develops over coming days. And of course, today, being September the 14th, roster announcements can officially start to happen. I wonder if some of these teams will wait a few days. This was the latest updates really from Crone, but this is what most of the teams look like. As I say, some of these teams could announce right now, and they could come up with their roster and say this is what it is. I imagine some of them will wait a few days, maybe build up some hype or something like that, but you know, we'll have to see. About a week or so's time from now, I imagine we'll have a couple of announcements, maybe like 3, maybe 1 or 2, and then like a month's time from now, we'll probably have most things set in stone, and maybe only 1 or 2 teams yet to announce what is going on. These are all the current rumors. Then let's go on to the announcement the CDL made not long ago. The 2021 season has officially begun. New ways to compete incoming, and as we see on this graphic here, PC plus controller, and then we get from the challenger side crossplay, which is also a big deal that we're going to talk about at length in the coming minutes here. So this is what they come out and say. Today, September the 14th, 2020 marks the official start date of the 2021 season of the Call of Duty League. For the players who have not had their extension options exercised, free agency is now a thing. It awaits, as they say right here. Stay up to date on all the Rostermania action by following COD League on Twitter. Also subscribing to TouchGrub's YouTube channel. That works a treat as well, I have heard from numerous sources. We are not yet ready to outline the season schedule today. However, there are a few key elements the league is excited to announce. The big one, of course, being this: platform transition. Today, the league is announcing it will move pro team competition to PC plus controller, beginning with the 2021 season. This means that all pro matches will be played on PC, and all pro players must use a league-approved controller of their choice. This certainly is a big deal. As part of this transition, Call of Duty League competition will maintain exclusive use of controllers for the upcoming season. They haven't said for the foreseeable future, they haven't said for the next 5 seasons or whatever, they've just said for the upcoming season, which, you know, it not necessarily says either way that next season in 2022 it's going to go to keyboard and mouse or anything like that. I don't believe that will be the case, but it certainly is moving to PC. It does create the risk, I suppose, for a number of these pro players that at some point the league might just pull the trigger and make it keyboard and mouse, or make it crossplay, right, where you can use controller or keyboard and mouse, and you know, at that point it may be more likely that a lot of these pro players' spots get overtaken by guys that are absolute wizards on keyboard and mouse, because it does have a higher degree of functionality than a controller. For now though, it is staying on controller, and I think that PC and controller, if it does stay this way into deep into the future, this is 100% the way to go. So it does carry some risk, I think, for the scene more generally, because the personalities that make the scene, if it does go keyboard and mouse, or at least if you can use any input device at some point in the future, a large number of those players will probably lose their jobs, but PC also does definitely bring its advantages if it is played with controller. I think that Rocket League and maybe NBA 2K operate on a similar mechanism where it's on PC technically, but controllers are the only permitted input device, I suppose. This change provides players with an expanded choice of controller, allowing them to select the league-approved controller style that works best for their game. Interesting, announcement here, because of course the league is technically sponsored by Scuff, so I'm not exactly sure what they mean by this, but more details and rules pertaining to peripherals, which is kind of things you use outside of the game, controllers like headsets, this kind of stuff, will be released at a future date. So there's a number of pros to this, and we'll just run through a few of them. First of all, PC definitely has much more functionality, right? Even when the PS5 and like the Xbox X series or whatever it's being called actually comes out, they're not going to have the functionalities that PCs can have. I mean, like, yes, they say the PS5 can run maybe Cold War at like 120 frames per second, which is pretty impressive, but PCs can do it like way higher than that. And you've got these like 244 hertz monitors now. You can get PCs that play the game on 240 hertz, like, you know, frame rate effectively, and that's definitely a much superior experience. And a lot of people this season have gone over to play Warzone on PC plus controller, because it's a much better experience to play it on there than it is on console, because the functionality and like the level of gameplay is so much higher on what you can produce on a PC. So definitely a step in the right direction there. It also gives more potential. We've seen the pause feature, for example, at the beginning of Modern Warfare that worked kind of well when we were on LAN at the opening weekends, but since then it kind of fell off and didn't work really on the online scene at all. Going to PC definitely brings more potential for these kind of like peripheral benefits to competitive play. Also, you think about the field of view slide. Sometimes you might see people play PC and think like, why does the game look so weird? It's because they've expanded their field of view so they can see more. Kind of looks like they're further away from their gun, if you see what I'm saying. You know, there may be some caps on it, as we'll talk about in a second, to mean that, like, especially for challengers, crossplay, as we will discuss here, some of the guys that maybe can't afford to have like a $2,000 PC, which is going to give you the maximum possible specs, you kind of want to still have it open to people that don't necessarily have that financial backing, and all they can afford is like a PS5 or whatever, and still allow them to compete at this kind of like high level. But PC will certainly have an advantage. There is a couple of benefits though, as we just discussed, and I think if they do this right, it's certainly going to be a good thing. COD Gamepedia also say that if there are local LAN tournaments, a lot of these providers already have PC setups for, you know, the other events that they run, which means they don't have to buy a lot of like PS4 Pros in or whatever, like you had to do back in the day, which yeah, makes it less expensive to actually run these local tournaments. You can also think about this from a sponsorship perspective as well, so a couple of other pros we'll talk about before we talk about the challenger stuff. But in terms of sponsorships, going to PC opens up like Intel, AMD, Nvidia, all of these like peripheral, you know, providers, the CPUs and the graphics cards and all this kind of stuff. These other sponsors become available in addition to Sony, so that's a potential good thing. Also, to bring up another point which I don't think a lot of people are talking about, is that the PlayStation Store takes something like a 40% cut of anything you buy in the game. So if you buy a CDL Camo or something like that, Sony will take a 40% cut of that, which really does restrict the amount of money that the teams and the league owners and all this kind of stuff and the players get from when you buy their like in-game stickers or something like that. Removing that PlayStation sponsorship, as I imagine is what's going to happen here, completely removes that additional cost that the league has to incur, and definitely expands the opportunity for teams and players to actually make more revenue from these in-game sales and well, just increase that kind of revenue stream. So moving on to the challenger side, for the first time in Call of Duty esports history, competitors will be able to compete online in Call of Duty Challengers on their platform of choice across console and PC. We will continue to test platform hardware and make restrictions if necessary. Mouse and keyboard peripherals will not be allowed, this is clear. Any LAN Challengers events that take place during the season will be played on PC. Competitors may plug in their league-approved controller of choice. More information will be coming soon. They also talk about dedicated Challengers broadcasts. This is really cool to see. During the inaugural season, we've introduced dedicated broadcasts, so finally this is a thing. I mean, it's such an obvious thing to do. I'm surprised they didn't do it already. Hopefully it'll be region-based as well. That would be pretty cool to see. But for the 2021 season, we're planning to introduce new programs that will continue to spotlight top Challengers talent throughout the year. We're not ready to share specific details yet, but definitely cool things on the horizon here. Few comments on this for a number of the amateur players. I'm sure there'll be some sort of cap in place, so effectively capping what FPS you can pull off, because if you have like a massive PC, as BZ's talking about here, that can run COD on like 400 frames, 244 hertz monitor, that's a significant advantage on what some of the console guys will have playing at 120 hertz, for example. You know, Blaz doesn't reckon that will be the case. Like, if you're on console, you are chalked, and you know, we have a similar discussion here from Dave, like, since it's cross-platform, I need to know if there's any caps before I buy an absolute spaceship. And yeah, definitely some discussions here on whether they actually will introduce a cap into play to ensure that people who do play on console don't necessarily have that significant disadvantage against the PC guys. That most likely will be the case if this does come into effect. It may heighten the difference really between some of the guys that are like lower tier challengers players. The pros are obviously all going to be using absolute spaceship PCs. The top amateur players are going to be doing that as well. And the guys that don't necessarily have the money to do that might still be playing on console and be at a significant disadvantage. So that is a bit of a problem. It does decrease the accessibility, I suppose, of Call of Duty, because typically it's just like you buy a PlayStation 4 and all of a sudden you could potentially be the best player in the world. Nowadays you need these high specs, and yeah, similar discussion really between Silly and Co here, so I'll just kind of scroll through this if you guys want to read through this. But you know, pretty interesting here, to be honest, from Silly, talking about how if it's cross-platform, for example, are people still going to be playing on PS4, Xbox One? I mean, I kind of doubt that's going to be the case, but yeah, maybe it's still possible, right, if it still is an option. But Blast is saying, like, if you're, you know, if you're bad by buying a 4K PC, isn't going to make you any better, which is certainly a fair point as well. So before we finish, let's just talk about a couple of the potential disadvantages here. One of the key ones really is the whole anti-cheat situation. Yes, we've talked about cheating this season and yeah, the potential of these like Cronus Zens and the strike packs and all this stuff that players could be using from the comfort of their own home. On a PC, that well, that potential for abuse definitely becomes a lot greater here. And as Boffers is saying, please just make sure the game has a good anti-cheat, otherwise we are going to have issues. And certainly Warzone has had issues over the last few months, really, with cheaters in the game, and Fall Guys even now having issues on a similar thing. The potential for abuse here is definitely greater, and now we move to a PC environment. So definitely Activision needs to be very careful of this one. And of course, the final question really is, given it's only for the upcoming season, is there going to be a time in the future where the CDL decides that we're going to just allow everything is going to be open and keyboard and mouse is permitted, and you know, a lot of our pros aren't going to be able to compete? That's a discussion we can have in coming days, certainly. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like if you did, subscribe if you are new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you next time.